It doesn't change the quality of the image. It simply takes a small set of sensor and blows it up. You can do that in your computer. Optical lens brings the subject closer and uses the full area of the sensor. Digital camera supplies uses a smaller area of the sensor, but it costs quality because instead of having this big a sensor, you've got this big a sensor. Okay? That's the difference between the two, so don't fall for this. Nothing wrong with digital zoom, just don't fall for it as a selling
Is
factor.
it more like you're taking a cropping?
Yeah, you're cropping it and blowing it up.
Yeah,
That's
so
all you're
again,
doing.
it's all blurry.
You're losing.
Then you're losing all the detail that you got. All right, back to the creative tools. Perspective. What does perspective means? It's where you take the picture. Where yesterday, when I got back to the hotel, my knees were wet, my butt was wet, my face was wet, my feet were wet. Why? Because Sue was wet because you were moving around. You were changing the perspective. 90% of all photos are taken from eye level. Why? Because, man, my knees are as creaky as everybody else's, right? So, normal eye level. Here's one taken with normal eye level. We got off an island, and we were going to get off an island in the Congo River, and then we're like, maybe we shouldn't. If you look at eye level at the hippo. Looking up. Oh, look. There's stuff going on. There's stuff going on all the time with him. Flying up and, right? Point the camera up. We call that high angle. Omnipotent. Boy, look at the ground. There's a couple of stag beetle larvae down there, you know. And then low angle. This is the one people don't use because you have to get down there with the subject. Okay? Frogs and toads of the world live, and it changes the perception very, very dramatically. The best photos of birds are at water level, looking not. Okay? You'll never see a prize-winning bird photo with the photographer standing up looking down at the bird. You just won't, because you can tell, or you're too lazy to bend over, you just didn't do it. All right, so creative tools of photography are using these techniques. The number one most useful one is depth of field, and the number one least utilized and least understood is depth of field. Okay? Depth of field is simply the amount of the subject that's in focus. Now, everything in this room is in focus right now to me because my eyes are bouncing back and forth. The camera does not bounce back and forth. All right, so depth of field is a function of one thing and one thing only, and that is how big the opening in your lens is, the aperture. Okay? It's called the angle of incidence. If you want to know the physics, we'll go into it, but we don't. So, on this lens, it goes from 2.8 to 22, which means you have lots of different options for depth of field. If it went from f8 to 22, you ever seen a 500 millimeter lens for $99? You can buy them. And it's an f11 fixed lens, which means it doesn't let any light in. So unless you're photographing an atomic explosion, it's not much good. Okay? So, we call this opened up. You know, this is the language of photography. Opened up. The lens is opened up. It's letting light in. Or it's stopped down. You can use closed down, but we use stopped down. Because each one of these is a stop. Okay? So stop down, opened up. You think about this every time you take a photograph? You are cognizant of it. If you're not, then you're not controlling anything. I know, everything. You see all those numbers in your viewfinder? They're changing? Well, I don't care about that. Yes, you do. Here's the way your camera works. Light comes in through the lens, hits the mirror, comes up, bounces, and your eye sees what you see. You take the picture, the mirror bounces up, and the light hits the sensor. Okay? That's the way the camera works. Okay? Now, this lens opening is always opened up. Otherwise, you couldn't see the subject. Okay. When you take the picture, the camera, the exposure, it automatically sets the right exposure for you, which means it has to close this opening down at some level. And it happens automatically. You don't even pay any attention. And then when you get the picture back, you say, that doesn't look anything like it looked through the viewfinder. Of course it did. Unless it took it wide open, what changed? The depth of field changed. It changed, okay? So when you look at your viewfinder, the lens is opened up or wide open. When you push the shutter, the mirror flips up and it allows light to hit the image sensor and the aperture stops down and closing that stuff. What the heck does that mean? Doesn't mean anything except, oh, you need this exposure, so it closes it down, it closes it down, it closes it down. But when it does that, it changes something, it changes the depth of field. And you can control that. Believe it or not, you can control it. Okay, why is it opened up? Because otherwise you couldn't see the subject through the lens because it's too damn dark. In the old days of photography, lenses weren't automatic. You focused on the subject, you manually closed it down, and it got dark and dark and dark and dark and dark. I've got one of those lenses. And pretty soon, well, I hope it's still in focus because I can't see it, right? All right, so understanding depth of field. Here's your subject, a row of telephone poles, okay? All right. Full aperture, wide open. Here's how much depth of field you have to work with. And that's it. Now, which one of the, how you choose to use it is a function of that first creative control, selective focus. Which one of these poles you focus on, that's what's going to be sharp. Everything else is going to be blurry. So you got two things with the lens wide open. If you're all the way over here, I've got to close down all the way, and all of a sudden I've got all this depth of field to work with. And everything in between is variations of the same thing. Okay? And you have to understand that, because otherwise you're not controlling it. If you're not controlling it, then it's random. Then it's random action that you don't have any control over. Okay? So open up, stop down. So if you want maximum depth of field, you stop the lens down. Now, as I always say, every time you do something in photography, you got to give something back. How many of you are married? When you get something, you give, you want to go fishing today, and then we're going to the mall tomorrow, or then you have to go grocery shopping. It's push me, pull me. You give something up, to get something, you got it never varies. You can't change that. So the rate indicates the amount of the subject that is in focus, or the depth of field. Depth of field. So how much of the subject is in focus? All right. How much of this subject is in focus? Everything. How much of this subject is in focus? Virtually nothing. Okay? How did you do that? By controlling what? Depth of field. And how did you control depth of field? By how big the opening was. And go back to what I told you to forget about, the focal length of the lens. Those two things control depth of field. If this was taken with a wide angle, this one was taken with a telephoto. Remember that thing, you get less depth of field the longer the lens is? Okay? So, which photo was taken with the lens opened up? Wide open. Yeah. Did everybody understand why? Because there's no depth of field. And you focus on exactly what you want, and what happens to the rest of it? You ever taken a photo that had a bunch of crap in the background that detracts from the photo? Why? Because you mismanaged depth of field. That's all it is. Now you got to be making sure that the camera knows this is the subject, right? Otherwise, shooting all over the place. Okay? Huh? That's prairie smoke. You don't have it around here. It's a northern prairie species.
Up by Rockford.
Okay, so what creative controls that we know now were different in each picture? What's different? The selective focus was different. What else?
Perspective.
Perspective is much differently. This is down on the ground. This plant's this tall. This one was looking down on it. This was
Maybe
human
time of
perspective.
day.
This was low angle. This was a wide angle. This was a different lens. So, see what I mean by being a photographer? Not a picture taker. You see something, you say, this is the image that I want to take. All right, I'm going to show you two images taken on exactly the same day. Right. Same. This is the same as those other two images. Okay. Maximum depth of field, minimum depth of field. Why would you ever want minimum depth of field? Because you like beautiful. You don't carry. Well, some people do, but you don't carry fake backgrounds into the field. You simply don't do it. You do it in the camera. You can. Oh yes, hold that up here while the pelicans fly by the thing. No. You can't do that. You can't do that. So maximum depth of field, minimum depth of field, what creative controls were different in each picture? See, it's the same. Perspective, this is omnipotent, this is low angle, it's a different lens, or different focal length lens. It's just variations on the same thing. So you don't have to learn a million different controls, you have to learn a few and just do them, okay? All right. So what did I use on this? Well, I don't know. You could have used this one. You could have used aperture priority, which would have given you lots of depth of field, but it would have taken a really slow shutter speed. You could have used shutter speed priority on this one, which would have given you a lot of depth. So either any one of those, you know. All right, same thing again. Da 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 da. Here's a viewing, here's an actual photo. Here's the viewing, here's the actual photo. Is the image visible to you? Do you find the same as the image will be captured? No. No, no, no. Unless you shoot it wide open, then it's the same. Otherwise, it changes, the depth of field changes. And it doesn't matter if you've got a $3 camera or a $30,000, it's the same. Okay? All right. So the thing you have to remember now is that shutter speed and aperture are linked together. Remember I said push me, pull me, push me, pull me. If you change one, you must change the other, or it will change automatically. Okay? Here's your shutter speeds, stop motion, blur motion, you know, stop action. If you want filmy water, this is 16 seconds. It'll blur water, no problem. But you got to hold the camera steady for 16 seconds. And if you go in here, then this, if you go down here, then you're going to be up here. If you're up here, you're going to be down here. Right? Because they're relationship. See, when I once, back in the old days, we went to Maryland, we had one of the old state vehicles, the windshield wipers didn't work. We were going over the mountains in a snowstorm, So I took my shoelaces off and I tied one shoelace to one side, one shoelace to the other, and we pulled it. And we were cursing Jim Edgar the whole way because he wouldn't buy us a nice vehicle. That's the way this works. If you pull one, the other one goes, okay? So you have to balance shutter speed and depth of field every photo you take, which is the right combination for what I want to do. That's what thinking like, you know, you're like, oh my God, it's instinctive. You just, you know, okay? Or you will learn. You don't know now, but you will learn. It's instinctive, right? You know. And when you get the picture back, you know when you screwed it up. The good news is you get the picture back right now. Well, I screwed that up. So you change it. I'm not going to worry about. It's all irrelevant. Okay. So what's the relationship between the focal length of the lens and available depth of field? We're back to that again. As the focal length, as the lens gets longer, each unit of depth of field gets narrower. That's why most people don't use telephoto lenses to take scenery, because they don't have a lot of depth of field. Okay?